Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I'm making for Jacob as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen from an act named 311. I thought it was 311, but apparently it's 311. This track is titled Beyond the Grey Sky, and we're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. We've got lyrics for this one too, so yeah, let's go. Interesting violining of the vocal parts. Or is it a synth?
It is a gift. I know a moment of bliss that we hold. A firecrack, a flash of light, then on to the next plane. So remain. Come along if you dare. It's gonna be that you're scared. Lovely life, I thank you for the reason to see the pain.
The double overtones are kind of sweet, although I have a feeling reading this that this is not a particularly really peaceful guitar and bass line though, isn't it? With the hi-hat focus as well, it's kind of sweet.
Light a candle on the dead. The wick is burning, returning what we have. It's who we are. We'll reach you if you're beyond the furthest star.
A really satisfying bass tone, actually. I would love to have that kind of bass tone.
Don't give up the fight to stay alive, and even if you have to, find the reason of another's pain if they lose you. If not for yourself, then those around who care like I do. One day you'll see the clear blue beyond the gray sky. Beyond the gray sky.
I was wondering if we were going to get distorted guitars in here. See, that's dynamic range, how things come up, get really intense for a moment, and then they come back down. Sense of relief there, even though I do miss it already. I like my guitars. Really tuneful guitar solo. I'm not sure why we had that many notes at the end of the solo. I'm not sure what it necessarily added to it to benefit the experience, but it's good that the soloist, the lead guitarist, got to spread their wings. I love the tone of the rhythm guitars actually. Great adjustment to the toms. It is incredibly sad. So my understanding is that this is a song about, if I'm not mistaken, a member of the band, their friend passed away, and this was a tribute to them due to due to, it's terrible. It's terrible, when people pass away like that. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the word on YouTube, the S word, Um, I suppose it's only only an issue, if you get demonetized. So I think that the friend passed away from committing suicide. So yeah, I think that I understand what this track is about. We're going to go talk about that in the conclusion. And welcome to the conclusion, my review of this track from an axe named 311 titled Beyond the Grey Sky off of the album Evolver. Now, what do I think this track is about? As I mentioned, I think this is a tribute to the departed friend who, basically I think the singer was just kind of writing about the experience of losing their friend. And at the end they ask, is there something I could have said to help you see past that grey sky with grey clouds, Because when you are depressed, as I understand it, that is what you see. It just doesn't seem like it's going to get better. And so I think that at this time, just as at any other time, if you've got anyone in your life who is struggling with mental health issues, please give them as much love as you can. Because it's a real pain, it's a real bitch to have to go through that. I think that songs like these are important because it helps us to understand that no matter who you are, you can be affected by it. And I'm incredibly sorry to anyone who's lost people they know because of it. I've lost people I know because of it. It fucking sucks. I think that the story is well intended and well told. The vocal performance is, despite the intensity and the direction and the purpose of the story, really well presented as well. I think that we sounded genuine. We weren't trying to go too dark with it. We weren't trying to get too heavy with it. There were some interesting major tonalities where it almost sounded like we were trying to find a way to cope with how sad we were about it. There were some interesting parallel majors there in the harmonies, especially near the end where the vocals kind of rose up with it. But we never really we weren't happy about it. We never sounded too sort of over the moon. It's more like I think we basically used those parallel majors or those intervals there to kind of soften how dark it was. It wasn't for the benefit of the singer, it was for the benefit of the experience for people who are not used to hearing stuff like that from this band potentially. I'm not sure, but anyway, I like the way that we did the vocals. It was very calm and mature and eloquent. There was a sense of relative minimalism. We didn't go too much depth with anything, but I think the structuring of how things were told was good, and I'm glad the opportunity to listen to it. The song at 4 minutes 16 had several verse sections, several chorus sections, and a guitar solo. I was happy with the vast majority of it. I think that the instrumental parts where we didn't have vocals were good because it allowed us to hear the different guitars, bass, drums, and synth parts in a way that was very meaningful, and it gave them room to breathe, and it painted an interesting picture without us needing to kind of have it kind of over-egged. If we talk about the individual instruments just for a bit, I think that the drum parts, the way they were performed was great. The drums were relatively laid back despite the complexity of different hi-hat patterns. The drums and the kicks and snares were good. They were present in the mix without being too overwhelming. We had a bit of dynamic range to it. Sometimes we got a little bit heavier, such as in those distorted sections, but we knew how to kind of pocket to keep to the mood and the intensity of the other elements within the arrangement. And I thought the drums, again, the percussion was incredibly well done. We went between the kind of dubbish stuff and the kind of rockish stuff really well and really seamlessly. A really sort of simple bass motif, da-da-da-dum, that was nice and chill, and it allowed us to kind of roll along. And if we weren't paying attention to the lyrics, it might have just been a really nice, calm song without any sort of anything more to it. But it was almost like with the bass line we were saying to the listener, life goes on even if the worst happens. And maybe that's another element here where we're trying to get along and kind of cope with that loss. We just wish it didn't have to happen in the first place. Because other choices you have, you've got to move on. But, I think that if you'd had more bass than that, it would have been a little bit too sort of sub-heavy, especially with the emptiness in the track compositionally, which I think was also meant to indicate how they felt, which I think is another clever thing that they're doing there. Additionally, I feel as if with the guitar lines, with the wah pedal work there, going between the cleans and then into distortion was a nice touch there. We really had a great sense of contrast between those two textures, and I think it was deliberate, and I have no complaints about that whatsoever. It adds a sense of extra emphasis and oomph to the lines about this grey sky. And I think that's very important because that's part of what we want to listen to focus on. Lead solo, I wasn't super chuffed with the lead solo, but that's simply because for me I wasn't sure why we were having the amount of notes we did at the end. Far be it for me to tell a guitarist how to solo because I'm no expert, you know. It's not like I'm a professional lead guitarist or something like that. At the same time, I wonder what the thought processes was. Were we trying to sort of like was it meant to be like a bird flying through the sky or something like that? Were we trying to sort of like look at us kind of navigating that? Was that kind of aim we were going for there? I have questions about it. I think it was well played, and I don't think there was necessarily a note out of place. I'm just not necessarily sold on the way it was implemented. But, you know, again, like solo sections are very subjective things. There'll be some people that hear me say that and don't think, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And that's okay. I think it's just me being open and honest with my feedback. I'm not sure if we needed all of those notes, but if they were important to the singer, or if they were working through the guitarist, should I say, if they were important to the guitarist and they were working through their grief by soloing like that, then, you know, more power to them. Ultimately, I think, you know, with the combination of these various elements, including the synth, actually, the wow, I don't know if that was violin guitar where you kind of move the volume and wow, like you increase the volume, but without the note, and you kind of bring it up without the attack. I don't know if that were a synth, but it was almost kind of very fluffy sounding, and maybe that was talking about the clouds in the sky or something like that. Kind of something sort of middling. It had a sense of, it was kind of pretty sounding, but it was also meant as a sub-layer, and I think it was just that maybe the track would have been a little bit too sort of empty or ominous without it. So maybe that was just a thing they put in to sort of soften it, I'm not sure. But the theme overall, it sounded like we were mildly frustrated about the situation we're in. We want to celebrate the person's life and have tribute to them. And I don't think we want, maybe I don't know how to describe it, because it's like I'm saying how they should cope with the pain that they feel, and it's such a subjective thing. I think that if they'd gone hard and heavy with it and made it really edgy or something like that, it would have kind of overdone it a little bit. I suppose they were trying to find a way to write about this and play the music, which was in a similar style to the previous work they already had. Whilst also, maybe they just wanted it to be a style of music that the friend liked or something like that. I'm not sure. It's just, I'm kind of getting my head around the way they did the harmonies there. And even though I think the distortion was important for that sense of power and edge and that kind of pressure there, maybe that was just their best interpretation of what they felt, put into musical format. And that's their experience, and I shouldn't be judging it in the first place. The theme is what I think it is, though, and I think that, I guess if it's their own experience, then that makes sense. Finally, the studio recording, mixing, and mastering. It's like, I think the vocals were done well. There was a massive amount of space within the stereo field. Things were nice and wide without overwhelming things at all. I think that it was tremendously done. The way that the basses and drums were handled had a great presence there. Things were nice and prescient. There was interesting niching and filtering and cueing of things as well. Things never got overwhelmed. At the same time, things were glued well. It was nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression limiting was handled well. So it sounded like it was still within the same track. It didn't sound like a live take. It's a weird situation where I think, it's commercial grade production. I don't really know how I feel about this track. I'm still undecided, but that's my best attempt at a conclusion. The vocals had I already said the vocals had great presence. I think the best I can say about this before we close out is that this was a very organic experience, and I think that they're a band who, maybe at the time writing this, was still working through that. And I don't know if I've gotten it right with this one, but again, it's a tricky thing to discuss. Ultimately, this is my review of this track from 311 titled Beyond the Grey Sky, and hopefully, even if you didn't necessarily enjoy my feedback on it, you like the music. Please do go show them some support via their various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. Please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they help more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next SP Patrons video. Spiderhands out.